Hi guys, welcome back. Yesterday we started chapter 7 in our BFG book. We were talking about the giant's marvelous ears, and he was sharing with Sophie about how he gives children dreams and what those dreams are and how he hears them. So we are going to go ahead and keep reading in chapter 7. I did stop it a little bit before chapter 7 was done yesterday just because it kind of got a little long. So we're going to finish it up today and probably, maybe, we'll see how far we get. Here we go. In your country, he said, I is hearing the footsteps of a ladybird as she goes walking across a leaf. Honestly? Sophie said, begging to be impressed. What's more, I is hearing those footsteps very loud, the BFG said. When a ladybird is walking across a leaf, I is hearing her feet going clumpity, clumpity, clump like giant's footsteps. Good gracious me, Sophie said. What else can you hear? I is hearing the little ants chittering to each other as they scuttle around in the soil. You mean you can hear ants talking? Every single word, the BFG said, although I is not exactly understanding their language. Go on, Sophie said. Sometimes, on a very clear night, the BFG said, and if I is swiggling my ears in the right direction, and here he swiveled his great ears upwards so they were facing the ceiling, if I is swiggling them like this, and the night is very clear, I is sometimes hearing faraway music coming from the stars in the sky. A queer little shiver passed through Sophie's body. She sat very quiet, waiting for more. My ears is what told me you are watching me out of your window last night, the BFG said. But I didn't make a sound, Sophie said. I was hearing your heart beating across the road, the BFG said, loud as a drum. Go on, Sophie said, please. I can hear plants and trees. Do they talk? Sophie asked. They is not exactly talking, the BFG said, but they is making noises. For instance, if I come along and I is picking a lovely flower, if I is twisting the stem of the flower till it breaks, then the plant is screaming. I can hear it screaming and screaming very clear. You don't mean it, Sophie said. How awful. It is screaming just like you would be screaming if someone was twisting your arm right off. Is that really true? Sophie asked. You think I is swig-figgling you? Wow, that one was hard. Let me try again. You think I is swizzle-figgling you? It is rather hard to believe. Then I is stopping right there, said the BFG sharply. I is not wishing to be called a fibster. Oh no, I'm not calling you anything, Sophie cried. I believe you. I do really. Please go on. The BFG gave her a long, hard stare. Sophie looked right back at him, her face open to his. I believe you, she said softly. She had offended him. She could see that. I wouldn't ever be fibbling to you, he said. I know you wouldn't, Sophie said, but you must understand that it isn't easy to believe such amazing things straight away. I understand that, the BFG said. So do you please forgive me and go on, she said. He waited a little longer, and then he said, It is the same with trees as it is with flowers. If I is chopping an axe into the trunk of a big tree, I is hearing a terrible sound coming from inside the heart of the tree. What sort of sound? Sophie asked. A soft moaning sound, the BFG said. It is like the sound an old man is making when he is dying slowly. He paused. The cave was very silent. Trees is living and growing just like you and me, he said. They is alive, so is plants. He was sitting very straight in his chair now, his hands clasped tight together in front of him. His face was bright, his eyes round and bright as two stars. Such wonderful and terrible sounds I is hearing, he said. Some of them you would never wish to be hearing myself, but some is like glorious music. He seemed almost to be transfigured by the excitement of his thoughts. His face was beautiful in its blaze of emotions. Tell me some more about them, Sophie said quietly. You just ought to be hearing the little missies talking, he said. Little missies is always talking to each other, and I is hearing them as loud as my very own voice. What did they say? Sophie asked. Only the mices know that, he said. Spiders is also talking a great deal. You might not be thinking it, but Spiders is the most tremendous natterboxes. And when they is spinning their webs, they is singing all the time. They is singing sweeter than a nightingale. What else do you hear? Sophie asked. One of the biggest chatterbags is the cattle piddlers, the BFG said. What do they say? They is arguing all the time about who is going to be the prettiest buttery fly. That is all they is ever talking about. Is there a dream floating around in here now? Sophie asked. The BFG moved his great ears this way and that and listened intently. He shook his head. There is no dream in here, he said, except in the bottles. I has a special place to go for catching dreams. They is not often coming to giant country. How do you catch them? The same way you is catching buttery flies, the BFG answered, with a net. He stood up and crossed over to the corner of the cave where a pole was leaning against the wall. The pole was about 30 feet long, and there was a net on the end of it. Here is the dream catcher, he said, grasping the pole in one hand. Every morning I is going out and snatching new dreams to put in my bottles. Suddenly, he seemed to lose interest in the conversation. I is getting hungry, he said. It is time for eats. Let's see. Let me just take a peek here to see how long chapter 8 is. All right. Well, that is where we are going to stop today, kiddos. Tomorrow, we will talk about what the big friendly giant eats. Snozcumbers. All right. I'll see you then.